It was one of those hot summer days in vacation time in Mississippi. My sister Rachel was down at the swimming hole waiting for me to come down. I began slowly to ride this horse down to the stream. Suddenly I was to meet with an experience that was to be a deciding factor in my life.
This may be just a story set in the Mississippi of the mind rather than memory. But to one man it was more than memory, it was a vision. To him, it is true, even though it might never have been real. This boy on horseback, who might never have been except in this man's mind, this boy and no other, this is the boy who was to grow up to become one of the most elegantly brutal, most exquisitely devastating, and yet one of the most terrifically gentle men the world of fists has ever known. This is the boy who was to grow up to become Archie Moore, the light heavyweight champion of the world.
The experience came in the form of a small white lad whom I only saw once in person, but must have been thousands of times in dreams and in thoughts. And after getting to the swimming hole, all the youngsters there sat around the rocks, and they were proudly admiring me coming up on this horse. Then who should come out of the bush but this little white boy waving a switch, and struck the horse across the face, and the horse reared up and frightened me. And I jumped off the horse, feeling that if I had tried to stay on, maybe I would have gotten hurt. I shook the white boy in the collar fiercely, and he cried, and by the time I turned him loose, I looked around and I saw many little bottoms going up the road, bare feet kicking up dust, and they were heading homeward. And finally, after trying to get up on the horse, I had to grab the horse by the bridle and try to lead him back to the house, which was some chore. And finally, after about 15 minutes, walking 4 blocks, the horse putting his heavy head down, nibbling at the hay and grass, I finally got back to the porch. And there were all the little children around the porch looking at me as if though I had done something wrong. And my auntie was on the porch, and she said to me, "Come here, Archie Lee." And by the tone of her voice, I felt that something was wrong. And I said, "Auntie, what's the matter?" She said, "Why did you hit this little white boy?" My reply was, "I didn't hit him, Auntie. I only shook him." And she said, "You lie." I said, "Honest, Auntie, I didn't hit him. I only shook him." And by that time, I said, "Honest." She knew that I was leveling with her and telling the truth. And then I explained it to her, that I was only trying to defend myself. And she said, "We'll have to leave this part of the country, son, because do you know that they kill colored people for hitting white people down here?" That day, I found out that life itself was a fight, and I had to be a fighter.
In this corner, weighing 168 pounds, wearing white trunks from San Diego, California, the light heavyweight champion of the world, Archie Moore!
He says his name was always Archie, never Archibald. Archie Lee Moore. A boy with a taste for visions, depression, scrounger, juvenile delinquent, rider of freight trains, a pool player, pro boxer, restaurateur, publicity hound, movie and television actor, a husband and father, and a trainer of boys. A man who has touched greatness. This is his story. Like the heroes of myths and legend, Archie Moore shrouds his birth, his childhood, and even his name in mystery. He was born December 13th, 1913, December 13th, 1916. His birthplace was Collinsville, Illinois, and Benoit, Mississippi. He was raised by Mrs. Willie Pearl Moore, his aunt. Most of his memories are of her. Yet his mother, Mrs. Lorena Reynolds, now living in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, has memories of a son. Of a son born Archibald Lee Wright. A boy perhaps Archie Moore has forgotten.
The Moore family, they raised Archie, Rachel, and Samuel, and Lewis, and my children. And after they growed up to be big size, I moved away from around them, but I was around them. I come around them every day, and to see about them.
Things were very well with us because having a steady job and being an honest worker, our Uncle Cleveland always kept us in groceries and clothing.
Cleveland Moore, that was my brother. He was more than a brother to me because he was my father and everything. He was everything to me. And to Archie.
And every time he would wash his face, the muscles would ripple, and how me as a youngster would look and admire. And I would make a muscle sometimes, and my muscle looked like an egg.
And I imagine if he had lived, Archie wouldn't have even got into that trouble.
My uncle called me into the room as he was dying, and he asked me, holding my eyes to his, he asked me to promise him that I would take care of my auntie until one of us died. This was a question he didn't have to ask me. He knew I would.
That's when Archie started to getting away. He got unruly. He was cutting school and just bad, just doing bad things. And I would be worried about him. Sometime I'd go look for him. I didn't find him. Then I would inquire about him. And so when he did come in, I'd ask him, I said, Archie, where's you been? He said, Mom, I've been to the gym. And I said, what is you doing? He said, I'm going to box, Mama. And then I tell him, I said, oh, you ain't going to be no boxer.
In the mid-30s, I was in the CC camps in Poplar Bluff, Missouri, Camp 3760, about 15 miles out into the wilderness. And I really enjoyed this camp because the work we did, to me, was being paid to exercise. I had just met a young lady at that time named Gladys, dancing, a malted milk, something like that. It was very fine. But the thing I liked most about the CCs was to get back in the early morning and smell those hickory trees, those pine cones. We'd be taking to work in a stake-bodied truck. And as we got into the woods, the boys were sitting down on the benches in the truck, and I was standing over the cab of the truck, leaning forward, planting my feet in the center of the truck, pretending that I was young Griffo, the champion of Australia, who was magnificent in his defense, making men miss him 50 times as he stood on the hanks, bobbing, weaving. Of course, I had many non-believers in my captive audience, as they said I was punch drunk already before I even started boxing. It was fun, though, watching those branches very closely, making them miss just a split second. Time was all essential in this, because if you can keep a man from hitting you in the head, you can last a long time. And this is what I did. The monotony of camp life was to be broken by payday, but I lost all my money in a crap game. But being determined to get to St. Louis to see Gladys, I decided to ride the rods, because I had a date with Gladys, and I also had another date I was to find out later, a date with destiny. I didn't have to wait long for destiny, because destiny was right behind me. And while I was daydreaming, standing beside this big molasses tank, I thought about the days of when Dempsey rode the freight, and other great fighters rode the freights. They made it, I had to make it. And instinctively, I glanced, and there, in the split second, was a club that struck the guardrail of this molasses tank car with a driving force that shattered the club into smithereens, and I fell, straddled the gangplank, but I was up, and I ran halfway up the reefer car, which was up ahead, before I suddenly realized, how was I running? I hadn't stolen anything. There was nothing I could steal on this car but a ride. And why a man would want to kill another man for stealing a ride, I can't see. Well, after what seemed a long time, getting a lot of experience and building my body in the CC camp, I thought it was time to move on because I had boxing really on my mind. But how I would do was to go into the St. Louis area and get a job on the WPA. We were standing around the fire one day, and boy, it was cold, about 5 above zero. And we were talking about Louis Armstrong and the Mill Brothers, who, by coincidence, had made a beautiful tune, a big seller, called WPA. Went something like this: oh, the WPA, you lean on your shovel, you work while you play. The WPA, and boy, the kids are having a lot of fun and laughing, and pretty soon this foreman comes back, and he said, hey, you guys, take that fire out. And well, it kind of dampened our spirits, and the fellow said, well, okay. So they pretended they were going to work, and the foreman went down a couple of blocks, and he came back. He said, I thought I told you to put the fire out. So the guys sheepishly went away. And this time the foreman said, when I come back, if you're around the fire, I'm going to give you guys a 403. Now the 403 means finish. So he went about a half a block, and he cut through an empty house, and he came right back around. And he walked up to the fire and kicked it over. And all my dreams just fell into place because I could see myself being forced off of a job, like being forced off of a train. Now I've got to make it because my back is to the wall. And I took the shovel that I was leaning on, and I threw it up in the air. And hit the ground, bounced away. And I said, fellas, I've had it. The next time you see me, you'll be paying.
For Archie Moore, this was the end of coddling dreams and cherishing visions. Now it was time to make his move. Time to bring the genius out of his muscles. Time to go to work. Shortly before Archie left the WPA, a man called Kid Bandy contrived to become Archie's first professional manager. He had paid Archie $3 to box in a vaudeville show. To Archie, this was an entertainment feature, not a boxing match, but the AAU thought differently. So Archie Moore lost his amateur status, his chance to box in the Olympics, and turned pro, all to the blaring of a vaudeville band. A forlorn, if not grotesque, fanfare for a gladiator. But all doubt and disappointment left Archie when he turned pro. He left Bandy for George Wilsman, and then Wilsman for Cal Thompson. Thompson impressed the young Archie as having true flash. He had a new car, a piano in his front room, and a pop-up toaster. But for all his look of success, he did little to further Archie's career in St. Louis. Archie met Felix Thurmond, an auto mechanic turned fight manager. They loaded Felix's car with soda pop, peanuts and oranges, and together, armed with visions and conviction like Don Quixote and Sancho Panza, they left St. Louis for California in search of adventure, glory, and the big time.
We started out from St. Louis with about $37. And somewhere or other we made it.
Felix, you remember the first big test we had when we came here, fighting the Bandit Romero in the main event at the Coliseum?
Yes, I remember that very well, Archie.
I outpointed Romero in the first 2 rounds so easily, I thought I had a picnic. And lo and behold, this left hook came around, and I found myself stumbling across the ring, and then that was when Felix grabbed me in the back of the trunks and held me down, and then shoved me up at the count of 8.
In this confusion, everybody was hooping and hollering, so I stooped down and run right around the ring, see, and Archie was getting ready to pop up and start out again, but I held him down. See, I reached in and got my hands in his back of his trunk and held him down, and he was wiggling, trying to get up, and I said, "Stay down, stay down, stay down." And when the count got up to 8, I think it was, I said, "Now go ahead," see, and he went on out and finished the fight.
Well, how that anybody of the judges did not see you and disqualify you and me, I don't know, for interference, because you know that there is a rule in boxing that nobody is supposed to put hands on a fighter, who except the opponent.
Well, you see, Archie, I've been pretty slick member, not only in the fight game, anything else all my life.
Yeah, well, that was...
And I took the advantage of that because the people hooping and to get around there and save my fighter.
And then I found myself going through the fight and coming awake in the 8th round, and I asked Felix, what round is this? I didn't even know I was in a fight. I had been in a fight. And Felix said, this is the 8th round, so you got 2 rounds to go. And I said, well, I won the first 2 rounds, and I must have won 1 or 2 of the others. And he said, yes, you did. He said, you can win this fight. And I said, well, I'm going to fight this guy now.
Yeah,
and then I went right into him with my head down and my head laid on his chest, and I stayed there and wailed away until the 10th round. And after the fight was over, the referee, who was the only one to give the decision, raised Romero's hand, and somebody threw a bottle in the ring, in the paper cup. Somebody got cut, and several little altercations happened in the stands because the people didn't feel that I really lost that fight. And I was ashamed, being, well, my first chance, I had blown it. So I went downstairs and waited and hid in the dressing room in half an hour.
He gave Archie a terrible relation, so far as that's concerned, around the eyes. But to me, it was a terrible fight. So it was a very, very good fight.
When he was waiting in the dressing room with me, he was trying to get my eye down. My eye was swollen up so bad, I couldn't see out of it. And then I said, well, I'll slip home now, ashamed. And when I came outside, there were about 50 people waiting, and they all told me, you didn't lose the fight. But the next day was a great headline in the paper, Moore loses decision to Bandit in a sensational fight.
Archie won 12 of his next 15 fights. On January 1st of 1940, he married a girl he wasn't to see again for the better part of a year. 2 days after the wedding, he left for Australia, where he developed an international reputation and perfected his secret diet. His first fight was slated to be with Fred Henneberry.
However, I contacted a cold, and I had to delay the match. But later, I fought Jack McNamee, who had beaten one of my idols, Alan Matthews, who had much to do with the development of my style. I thought about these things, and I beat McNamee mercilessly, knocking him out in the 4th round. And then came Ron Richards, who was the 3 title holder of the British Empire at that time. And the first punch was a right hand, knocked me flat on my face, and the people emitted a disgusted sigh, as if to say, well, another turkey from the States. But I got up, and I began to pound him with those sledgehammer rights. And finally, the referee stopped the match in the 10th round.
Moore came back from Australia recognized as a title contender. He seemed to be in perfect physical condition, young, muscular, wittily bragging about his Herculean exploits, quoting Aesop. But a broken marriage and the knowledge that he was growing old in a profession that was practiced by the young had taken its toll. On February 26, 1941, he fought Eddie Booker to a 10-round draw. The next day, while mowing the lawn, he collapsed. He thought it was a delayed reaction to a blow he'd received in the ring. It was a perforated ulcer. He recovered from surgery weighing about 100 pounds, only to be stricken by appendicitis. Boxing seemed to be out of the question. Too proud to borrow money, he found work as a night watchman from Milt Kraft, who now runs a sporting goods business down in San Diego, California.
4 days after Archie, who was working for me, he came into the office and brought with him his scrapbook. And this was the first time that I knew that Archie was a fighter. He had just won both the welterweight and middleweight championships in Australia. We reviewed the book, and after reviewing it, Archie was sitting on the opposite side of my desk, and the tears started to come down in his face. And he told me with the greatest determination, he said, one day I will be a world's champion. You have to realize what this man was telling me. His stomach muscles had been cut. Physically, he was in very poor shape. But there was no question in my mind that he had gone into training 3 weeks after he'd come out of the hospital. And within about 6 months period from the time I first met Arch, he had his first fight in Phoenix.
The first fight was against Bobby Britt after my operation.
Someone said, well, what do you think about Arch's stomach, Thurman? I said, well, we'll take care of that. I said, there's going to be a whole lot of those boys that's going to get knocked out trying to hit Archie in the stomach. So, of course, they didn't know what I was referring to so far as that concerned, but I meant that we had a very expensive protective cup. Then I added more rubber to it, and I opened up the rubber side of it and put in a California license plate. If you remember, around about that time, that the California license plates are at least twice as long as they are now. It wasn't like just a plain piece of tin. It had all the numbers on it. So the more corrugation you have on a piece of tin, why, naturally, the stronger it is. We want to win the fight. But I think we used that quite a bit after that, too, didn't we?
I must have used this same license plate protector better part of 2 years.
Yeah.
In 1942, Archie and Felix Thurman went up the coast to Oakland, California, in search of fights. During the day, Felix worked in the Richmond shipyards while Archie trained around Lake Merritt.
Going down this trail every morning to Lake Merritt, I saw many fighters whom they wouldn't even make good sparring partners for me, but they were getting fights. And I began to ask myself, why is it that me, rated number 6 in the middleweights, yet and still I can't get enough fights to earn $300 a month? Now, there are people like Jake LaMotta that I know I could beat, fighting in Detroit and getting $12,000 for their purses, and I can't make $300 a month. Am I the biggest fool in the world? Something has to be done. And so in order to be free, in a sense, from borrowing money from the managers, I decided that I would open a chicken shack. At least I could eat every day. Now, chicken, it can be fried, boiled, broiled, baked, fricasseed, or even stolen, as it was in my case when I played in the film Huckleberry Finn. And still today, I enjoy frying a few chickens for my family, having Rena and Joni helping me and Hardy cutting the wood, because we do it in a primitive style. Well, the experience that I gained in frying the chicken in the came in especially handy when I decided that I would quit the chicken shack business and go back to prize fighting, because in cutting down expenses and cutting sharp corners, I found out that I could cook well enough to cook most anything that was camp fare. The fried chicken was kind of a special. After a monotonous 30 days or 40 days of steaks, the chicken was a delightful experience.
By 1946, Archie was #1 contender for the light heavyweight title. He remained #1 throughout the reigns of Gus Lesnovich, Freddie Mills, and Joey Maxim, a period of 6 years. For Archie, 6 years of being conspicuously ignored. He continued fighting and winning with almost boring regularity. By 1950, both Archie and the public seemed to be losing interest in his fight career. He entertained with a dance band for a while. He took up hustling pool. He toured Latin America. He seemed on the way out. Finally, he launched a nationwide publicity campaign and forced the champion, Joey Maxim, to meet him. The date, December 17th, 1952. The place, St. Louis, Missouri. The town where he had grown up with his Uncle Cleveland and Aunt Willie. Archie Moore was back home to fulfill promises, back home to realize a dream that began in Mississippi. And there was one man who couldn't lose this fight. Maxim's manager, the cunning Doc Kearns. Besides a guaranteed $100,000, Kearns would own a piece of Archie if the challenger won. After 12 years of being a rated contender, at 39, or perhaps 36 years of age, an age when most boxers retire, Archie Moore was the light heavyweight champion of the world. By 1955, Archie Moore had been in the amateur and professional boxing ring for over 20 years. It was a measure of his skill as a fighter, and this time he had never been knocked out, nor had his face marked. A fighter, because of an accident in the ring or the result of an opponent's blow, can receive any number of injuries to the facial bones, the eyes, the brain, hand and wrists, and internal organs. As a sport, boxing is less dangerous than skiing or football. But 20 years of incessant bodily punishment is a long time. And by the standards of the sport, in 1955, Archie Moore was an old man. This was the year Moore was to challenge the 32-year-old heavyweight champion for the crown. Not just any heavyweight champion, but the undefeated, only once knocked down Rocky Marciano. Moore mysteriously broke training for the Marciano fight and disappeared. He had developed heart trouble. Meanwhile, Marciano trained. The fight with Rocky Marciano promised to be the fulfillment of Archie's dreams. An underdog beating a legendary hero of the ring. A fight that would become a classic in the history of boxing. The winning of the heavyweight title. Archie's heart responded to treatment. He resumed training. And on September 21st in New York's Yankee Stadium, Archie Moore made his bid for greatness.
Oh, the Marciano fight, that was it. I didn't believe Archie was going to win that fight. It was going on fine. Archie was in the ring fighting, and when people was cheering him, and I was too. Marciano knocked him down. Well, I didn't think nothing about it. I just tell him to get up and fight. Get up, Archie, and fight. Get up, Archie, and fight. That's what I was hollering. Everybody was hollering, and Archie was covering up, going in that shell, on the ropes. So finally, Marciano they stopped the fight. He knocked him out. He was sitting on the ropes. He couldn't help himself. And so Marciano was very nice about it, though, because he could have hurt Archie on that rope, but he didn't. After they got up, Marciano went to him, threw his arms around him, and told him it was a good fight.
Later, Marciano said to Archie, "When you had me down in the second round there, Archie, was too close." And Archie replied, "Rocky, it's like I've always said. It was a pleasure to fight you." That was Marciano's last fight, but not Archie's. He kept his light heavyweight crown, but wanted the heavyweight title too. He fought for it against Floyd Patterson, and lost. Archie Moore was being called an old man, and has been. He was well liked in the boxing world, but no longer being taken seriously, even though he was light heavyweight champion of the world. The title, many said he would hold only until the next title defense.
I would put a Kansas City rack on these balls. Guarantee you, bet the 8 ball don't move 3 inches. 8 ball a quarter. All right. Look. Kansas City rack. Well, you should have been with us during the Durrell fight. Man, what a crew we had. Well, that was Barney and Hiawatha and Dick Sadler. Man, this was one of the greatest guys. We went out to the salt mine, and we used to run about 14 or 15 miles a day. And man, I got in such great shape because I was real conscious of the fact that everybody was calling me the old man. Well, he's washed up. Well, they've been saying that for the last 10 years. But now, really, I was at the crossroads, and I had to prove something. 5 in the corner, sir. See, this is the way I put Durrell in the corner. See? I locked him right up. And and Dick was just a great old cat.
Yeah, I remember
Dick Sadler.
Jumping over those ropes.
This is Charles Shipes, boy that got it started when I was with Archie Moore. I started training Charles Shipes, who, like Archie, was a very fierce competitor. And I say like Archie, there's only one Archie. There could be no two. Thank the Lord for that. Archie was a very good speed bag puncher. And it has been estimated that Archie hit the speed bag from 800 to 900 times in the process of one round. And any time that he was able to do that for 4 or 5 days in concession, then I knew that he was in shape.
For the light heavyweight championship of the world, the beef takes on...
On December 10th, 1958, in Montreal, Canada, Archie met Yvon Durell, known as the Big Fisherman.
The light heavyweight champion of Canada, Yvon Durell.
Durell was in his middle 20s, Archie in his 40s. Moore had with him the script of the film, Huckleberry Finn, and an unsigned movie contract with MGM. If he lost, he could perhaps have a new career in films.
173 pounds and 3/4. Le champion, the champion, Archie Moore.
Round number one. The referee does not involve himself in the scoring of the fight. The three judges do all the scoring. The referee does not have a vote in the fight, except, of course, that he can stop the fight, and also that he can penalize a fighter for a foul. Both fighters wearing dark fronts. Archie Moore's have the gold stripe, whereas Yvon Durell is wearing the white stripe. Expert guesswork on this fight pretty much came to a unanimous conclusion that Durell would have to come storming in at Archie Moore early in the fight if he were to get him, and he just did with a right hand to the jaw. 5, 6, 7, 8, up at 9, but staggering. Archie Moore dazed and staggering. Yvon Durell swarming over him. Is this tonight Father Time swings the side? Archie Moore pounding from rope to rope. And on his feet, rubber-legged. Durell nailing him with everything he has. The gallant old champion staggering about the ring. Up at the count of 2, there is no mandatory 8 count. There is no automatic 3 knockdown. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. He's up at the count of 9. 1 minute left in the round. 1 minute. Down 3 times. Durell trying to measure him. Can't seem to quite get to him as Moore now tries to move in and go into that shell-like defense. If Archie Moore lasts this round, it will be boxing's modern miracle. 30 seconds to go. Moore seems to be fighting his way out of it. Seconds. Archie Moore is going to make it. There's the bell. Archie Moore has made it. His handlers flew across the ring to get him back to that corner, and this is a big minute in Archie Moore's life. Jack Kearns leaning in from the ring ropes. The manager who guided the destinies of such as Jack Dempsey, now bringing his skill and training to bear in behalf of Archie Moore, as the seemingly ageless warrior weathered a storm that was tremendous. Down 3 times in the first round, staggering on rubber legs. But he just looked over at Jack Sharkey, smiled and winked at the referee, and he is telling his handlers now that he is all right as his face is slapped and popped back and forth to clear whatever fog may be left in the hard-hit head of Archie Moore. This was a tremendous beginning for number 5. Punches of the fight was hitting with good speed and good snap in that fourth round. After weathering a storm that had him on the canvas 3 times in round 1. He paced himself through rounds 2 and 3, just pretty much avoiding Durrell and regaining his strength and his clarity. Then started to move out after Durrell in round 4. Durrell came in with a beautiful right-hand shot, and Moore is down again. 6. Up at the count of 6. No mandatory 8 count. 2 minutes to go in the round. That right hand of Yvonne Durrell did it again. He has got Archie Moore wobbly. Moore trying to hold on. Archie Moore staggering, but fighting back. An amazing display by boxing's elder statesman, Archie Moore. How long should it go on? Left. We're in round number 5. Moore now throwing in some dynamite of his own. It was a good right hand that clubbed him on the head. 30 seconds to go. Look at Moore. Seconds to go. Round 5. Moore is going to make it again. 30 seconds left. Round number 7. Now Archie Moore has put the stagger to Yvonne Durrell. Drops him. Up at the count of 3. Durrell down. 10 seconds to go. To go. Round number 10. Shooting with those big punches, that big right hand that almost gave him the light heavyweight championship in the first and 6th rounds when he had Archie on the deck. Seconds left. Down goes Durrell. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Saved by the bell at the count of 8. But Archie Moore has completely reversed the early trend in this fight. Yvonne Durrell now is the troubled fighter, the weary fighter, the fighter who is dropping to the canvas. Across the ring, Archie Moore sits quietly, looking over here at Yvonne Durrell, surveying the damage that he has caused to be done here in this ring in Montreal. Now we come to round 11. Seconds were late getting out of the ring. Now Durrell seems to be on his way as Moore hangs into the canvas again. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, up at the count of 9, blood streaming from his nose and cut over his right eye. Moore back after him once again. And down he goes again with a clubbing right hand. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. struggling at 9, 10. He is out. Man, oh man, what a dramatic turn in this fight. Archie Moore. Archie, when you came into that ring in that beautiful sequin robe, I thought to myself, he looks like Superman.
Well,
after seeing you fight here this evening, I think you are.
Well, thank you very much. I enjoyed the fight so very much, and Ivan Darrell is a much better opponent than the people had granted him. And I can see why that he had a lot of those fellas down.
I would say you could see why.
Wow.
How much do you remember of the first round, Archie?
First round I can remember, only thing I can remember are the knockdowns, but I remember something kept telling me, get up, get up.
Yes, it was something telling me. I was hollering, get up, you're going to make it, you can't hit me, son, you must get up.
Archie, was there any particular moment in the fight when you saw it was beginning to come your way?
Well, I saw it beginning to come my way, and about the fourth round when I began to stiffen him up with good left straight jabs and work him around. And then I knew that I could get a right-hand punch over, which I did.
Being one man and a master of one art wasn't enough to consume the energy of one Archie Moore. He was full of visions, schemes, and an unquenchable desire to be many people at once. He had been a restaurateur, he had run a dairy, he had operated a market, entertained with a dance band, and in 1959, he became an actor. He played the part of Jim, an escaped slave in MGM's production of Mark Twain's classic, The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. His wife and advisor, Joan, said that out of all the Negro actors considered for the part of the escaped slave, Archie was the only one who could play it with dignity.
And working with the professional people such as John Carradine, Eddie Hodges, Mickey Shaughnessy, they were helping me in every way, especially Mr. Tony Randall, who is one of my favorite actors.
The most important role in Huckleberry Finn is not Huckleberry Finn, it's the escaped slave, Jim. That's the real story. Will Jim make it to freedom? And he has an extremely touching role in one heartbreaking speech in which he tells the story of how he was with his small daughter. She's 2 or 3 years old, and he tells her something and she doesn't pay any attention, and he hits her. And then realizes that she's deaf. And he feels that all the tragedy that's come to him is God's punishment for having slapped that poor deaf child. It's a heartbreaking speech, and it was the speech that they gave Archie Moore for his test for the part. Very difficult, because even though it's terribly sad and touching all by itself, if you do it in the least bit wrong, it'll be either too much and be maudlin, or be mawkish and unconvincing. Well, I saw Archie's test, and tears were just pouring down my face. It was so simple and real. It wasn't as if he had learned lines. He was simply telling a story of some frightful thing that had once happened to him in his own life. That's what good acting is. You saw the picture, he was the best of us in the picture, too. Archie's a remarkable man.
What was your greatest thrill? An actress asked Moore. Getting a starring role in Huck Finn or winning the championship? Why, it was winning the championship, Moore answered. The actress ignored Moore's eyes that had fried so many fighters, and she pressed on. But you're an actor now, remember that. To which Moore replied softly, I am a fighter first, last, and always.
Archie's last big fight was against a boy young enough to be his son, a 21-year-old Cassius Clay. 2 years after losing to Clay, Archie retired from the prize ring. He now lives with his family in San Diego, California, on the location of his old chicken shack. Behind him in a little house lives his aunt.
I thought that my greatest effort would be to win the heavyweight championship of the world. It was just never to be. This was a beautiful time to get off of life's merry-go-round in the fighting sense.
Archie says that he's over the hill and coming down the other side, but if he is, he comes running. Still filled with visions and in the pursuit of a dream. And following him are the boys of Archie's ABC, Any Boy Can, training program. His object is to lead them away from the path of juvenile delinquency, to give them a sense of dignity.
Move the chair.
The ABC is, no doubt, the last round or the greatest sight of them all in my life.
For the record, Archie Moore fought 228 fights in 29 years as a professional fighter, and he won 140 of these by knockout. Once in Mississippi, he was a boy with a dream. Now he has a dream for boys. My career is like a river, Archie has said. I would like to have it end by fulfillment, by flowing out into the mighty ocean. I don't want it to dry out before it reaches there.